Change due
Yeah.
to new technology and everything.
Yeah, like screen share. So, if it's okay with you guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have some latecomers. We dropped a bunch of postcards, but they just landed like 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they landed late because we send ourselves one, so we don't know if maybe there might be some people coming in that didn't register, but if not, it'll just be us. So this is Tatiana. You want to say a little bit about
Yeah,
yourself?
so my name is Tatiana. I'm a mortgage consultant with Prosperity Home Mortgage. I've been in the business for 21 plus years, and it's been a while. I've been through all this and crisis in 2000s and improvements now. So it's that's about it. Yeah.
She is our go-to lender. We met her about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago when we moved up here, and she did a couple transactions for us, and then we changed brokerages, and we didn't realize we could still use her. And then one day, about 3 years ago, we got desperate. We're like, Tatiana, I know we're not supposed to use you because we're not with the same brokerage. She's like, what do you mean? You can keep on using me. So we've been using her like nonstop since. So she.
Yeah, we have so many reasons why she is the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I even got my lender's license, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm never gonna be Tatiana, so I need to put that on the back burner.
And so I'm Sean, and this is Kelly.
Yeah.
We are with Samson Properties. We've been licensed in real estate when did you get your license?
I got mine in 2012 in Florida.
Yeah, and then I got mine in 2014. We were running a private chiropractic practice at the time in Florida. We retired from that in 2019 and went full time into real estate.
Yeah.
So that's our
But
thing.
you write so many things on the net. I saw everywhere.
What-
Every week. You write something on your comment, give so many comments on the
Yeah,
YouTube.
we do.
Yeah,
We do
yeah,
give a lot of
we
comments.
do. Yeah, we enjoy doing those market reports, and you may not have seen it, or you may have, but we'll do a weekly mortgage
Review.
minute with Tatiana, and then Kelly and I do a market report, and she's the star of the show, and I just kind of.
You will not be surprised to know that they're
Every week I
unscripted.
see everyone can go to market.
Yeah. So this graph is going to look familiar to you then. So what we're going to do is briefly go over kind of what the current market is, and you're probably familiar since you've been watching the market reports. Briefly go over what the current market is. Tatiana's going to talk about interest rates, where they are right now, and then we'll go into what a real estate transaction looks like, how the process works from where you are right now all the way up to settlement, just to give you that bird's eye view. So the first thing is, now let's see if this actually works. Come on.
And we'll get Q&A, which you guys will have a
Yes.
lot of opportunities to have.
Yes, yeah, that will happen. Okay, so we're not gonna worry about this. So this is a market graph that we run, and no, it's not the pretty one. She just redesigned this for me. This is a market graph that we run every 7 days. And the reason we use a 7-day market graph is because if you're using sold data, the properties that sold, like for example, in October. So if you use September sold data, when a house closes in September, let's say it closes September 1st, okay? That property went under contract likely mid-July to end of July. So it's already, when it closed, it's already 30 days past due. Then for the data to collect, they wait for September to end. So now it's 60 days past due. And then by the time the data gets out, it's usually half of the month. So it's 45 to
It's
65
old
days
data
old.
for that time.
So we look at that data to see overall what the market's doing, but we look at this data because this tells us what's happened in the last 7 days. So the orange line is buyer activity, and the blue line is inventory. And so that's basically supply versus demand. So in our current market, demand is higher than supply. If demand is higher than supply, that puts us into a seller's market, which means that as a buyer, you have to be a little bit more strategic. You have to be willing to compete, because you're probably, if it's a good property, going to be dealing with multiple offers in the situation. So you just have to be ready for that. Sometimes it might dip down, like on this week. That was a week for buyers. So we knew that, so we could go in and do the right strategy for the buyers. So that's why we use this lead data. So that's the market status currently in a seller's market. And then with regards to interest rates.
So this chart goes back to 1972, and you can see how we had over 16% interest rates in 1980s. So if they say that interest rate is high right now, it's so relative, right? Because in 21, 22 rates did go down to even 2%, right? And then they went up to a little bit over 7%. Very recently, we heard an announcement of Federal Reserve lowering the interest rate. So it's not the same as a mortgage rate. So mortgage rate have some reaction to that, and they did react, they went down, but now actually interest rates are going back up again. The difference is in media is very fast on telling people that rates went down, but they're not talking about rates going up. They are slightly up, but not crazy. So they're in high 6 right now, and like we like to say right now, by marry the house, date the rates, right? Because you get the house now, you don't wait until rates go down, because first of all, we don't know when it's gonna happen, and there could be very small window when they go down, like just like we had. It was a small window of time when rates went down, and you cannot lock the interest rate in if you don't have a property, if you don't have a contract, right? So if you wait until rate goes down, you're missing out on appreciation, because the prices are gonna go up. So maybe you're gonna get lower interest rate, but because price went up, you're gonna end up with the same mortgage payment as if you would have with a higher interest rate but lower price. So if you secure that property at current price point, and then you refinance a year later when rate goes down, you're gonna get better monthly payment and you get better terms. So all these little zigzags right here, just a little bit over here, those are all refis. So if someone bought in 2011, 100% they refinance in 2012. They bought in 18, they refinance in 19, 20, probably 21 as well, so few times. So all those little zigzags, those are refi opportunities. And sometimes even 0.5% lower rate is enough for you to do the refinance. Yeah.
Do you know what she means by refinance?
Yeah.
You probably do. Okay. Yeah. So that the marry the was it
Marry the
Marry the
price,
house.
I
marry
always
the
get that
price
messed
and
up.
date the rate, yeah.
So that's a good approach, because as soon as those rates do start coming down, it's going to be back into 2020, 2021 volume where you're competing against 15 offers and you're going to be overpaying for the house. So if you get it now while the rates are a little bit higher, then when you get these dips in rates that comes, then you can lower that payment and you've got the property and you're getting that increase in value. Is that anything else on interest?
That's it.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions at this point?
Nope, not yet.
No? Okay. All right, so that's the market situation. So now we're gonna kind of just dive into the steps that it takes to get from where you are right now up to the point of getting to settlement. So we've broken it down into 10 steps. And the first step is, of course, building your team. Now, why is that important? Because it's so hard not having a mouse. So the first thing you gotta do is build a realtor, or hire a realtor. Why do you have to hire a realtor first? Because Kelly and I are realtors and we're up to talk. No, a lot of times we have relationships with the professionals that you guys need. So for example, Tatiana, a lot of times when we meet clients, maybe they're working with a national bank, or they're working with a lender who is not as gonna serve them as well as they will here in the local market. So we have the resources and the people that are in this market competing that top agents know that helps you guys with the process. So having a realtor, it protects your best interest. And when you are going through a real estate transaction, there are two different types of representation. There's seller representation and there's buyer representation. Any agent in Virginia by default represents a seller. So if you're having a conversation with an agent at an open house and that agent's talking to you, they technically are representing the seller. So anything that you say, they could report back to the seller and use against your negotiations. So you really have to be careful with what you're saying. Whereas buyer representation, that's where that agent that you have hired actually represents you in the transaction. They represent your best interest. So you should have your agent talking to the other agents to make sure that there's no insider information given. The next thing that you need to have or person is a home inspector. And the reason for that is it's difficult in this market to get a home inspection. Only about 30% of contracts are getting inspections in the contract. But a lot of our buyers right now are getting pre-offer inspections, which means that when they see a property they like, we get them in there before we write the offer, they do their inspection, and then they know what they're buying, and they decide if they want to write the offer or not. So that way they can still compete, but they have all the protections that they need and can still compete against people that are waiving inspections. So you want to have that home inspector kind of in your back pocket, so that when you find that property, you can quickly get him into that property and do that pre-offer inspection for you. So that's the home inspector. There are other specialized inspectors. You don't need to worry about this right now. They are only called in if there are certain things that come up on the property, or if there's a septic tank or a well or something like that that we need to have inspected. The next thing that you have to have in Virginia as the buyer, you get to choose the title company. The title company is the company that's going to do all the title research for you. They are going to do all the legal filings. They're going to make sure that all the legalities of the transaction are handled. They don't represent you and they don't represent the seller, but they manage the transaction itself. But as the buyer, you get to pick them. So depending on which company you choose, that'll affect your closing rate and different things like that. And again, you get to choose that. And then the last person you want to pick is your lender. And the lender is huge. So that is our next step, is get your lender pre-approval. So I'm gonna let Tatiana go into this with you guys.
And before I do, I just want to talk a little bit about why you need a buyer's agent. And because now it's a big talk that you can handle it yourself or hire someone for a flat fee just to show you property. So I like to compare it. You can climb Everest yourself, right? You can do the research, you can YouTube videos how to do it, you can buy your own gear, you can get physically fit, but when you get there, you don't want to do it by yourself, right? You want to have a guide who maybe helps you to carry your gear and tells you, okay, weather condition is bad, we actually need to stay here, we don't go up, or we have to run down, or oh my gosh, there's a crack in foundation, we have to run from it, right? So, and that's what agent would do for you, and setting up all the home inspections and do all the logistics, negotiation. It's a huge deal, and it just makes your transaction much smoother and the whole experience better. I'm not a realtor, but I've been in the business for so long. I would never buy or sell without a realtor, because they just do so much on the back end that you have to do it, and with our busy lives, right? You're just not gonna be able to handle that. That's why I think it's super important. You can do it yourself, but it's just gonna be bad and experience, and you might actually get worse deal than you think you can, just because you're not represented. So that's my 2 cents to that.
Yeah, and you're unprotected. So there's a lot of things that can happen in a transaction. You miss the deadline or don't understand the nuance of a different contingency or something, and it can cost you thousands. So,
yeah. So, but it is very important to get approved for a mortgage, right? Even before you start looking at properties, because you want to know what you qualify for, and maybe you definitely qualify for what you're looking for or even more, but you need to know what payment you're gonna have, or how much money you need to bring to settlement, what type of loan it's going to be, what terms are of that loan. And when you find a house and you want to put an offer on it, seller is not going to even look at your offer without pre-approval letter from the lender. So the pre-approval is when I take a loan application, I review your credit, your income, assets documentations, and then I run it through decision, it tells me approved or not. I'll give you an estimate, I give you a few options. We talk about everything, what fees are involved and such, and then very confused, he looks very confused.
I wasn't sure if I was in the right place.
Yeah, are you here for the buyer seminar? The home buyer?
Oh, no.
Okay, yes, so, and go over all the details, what fees are involved and what payment is going to look like. If you look at different properties, I can do the different estimates for each property, so you know exactly what to expect, and not going into the transaction completely blindfolded, right? So that's a pre-approval. We also have, is it gonna be
I think I
next
have.
one? Yeah.
Yes.
So we have we call it PUFA, it's a pre-offer full application. So that's when we send a file to full approval to underwriting. And underwriter is a person who has higher level of authority. They dissect the whole file. We do verification of employment with your human resources, and just look really deeply into the file and give official bank's commitment letter where we say, we commit to give you money, just go ahead and find property now. So that makes your offer much more competitive, especially it's super important right now in the seller's market, right? Because if you're competing against 4 different offers, you need to bend backwards to win that deal. You have to forego some, contingencies, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But when you have a commitment letter, you're much more competitive, and the seller will prefer to work with you because your finances are already done, and you basically 100% that you're gonna get the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're a cash offer, and everybody talks about cash is king. Cash isn't king in this market because a cash offer comes in, the seller's looking at what they can make on the deal. So if you can compete on terms, you can beat a cash offer.
Right.
So and you still have a loan that you're doing that with. And one of the things with Tatiana is she doesn't just run you through a computer and get you a pre-approval and so on. She looks at your situation and she looks at all the options that are available to you and helps you figure out what's the best one based on your goals. Sometimes it may not be best interest rate, it might be lowest down payment, and she'll mathematically run those numbers so you can see, hey, I'm gonna be in this house for 5 years, it makes sense to do it this way. So when you're working with a lender, the team that you pick really matters. She's gonna take the time to get to your goals and dive deep on that. Kelly and I dive deep on your goals. Our jobs are not to sell you guys on things, our jobs are to make sure you guys achieve your goals. And the only way we can do that is if we take the time to really learn what you guys need, what you're looking for. And she's really, really detailed on that.
Yes, and I think when agents working with the lender as a team, it's very important because we strategize together, right? When we write an offer, maybe we strategize, all of us together, including you, to figure out what the best offer, how it benefits you, what would it change for you if we offer a little bit more or a little bit less. So the teamwork is very important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also if I can add in your lender being available at nights and on weekends is hugely important, because when Sean and I represent sellers and we're taking in offers from multiple buyers, we're gonna call the lender on the pre-approval letters to see if we can get in touch with them and to just ask questions about what kind of documentation they saw. And if we can't get through to them on weekends and nights,
That's a red flag.
that's not really great. And our sellers are usually like, I don't want that to happen, because things can go sideways,
At the last minute.
not just on business days and during business hours. So that's a big thing when you're choosing your lender.
Yep. So the team is important. So you gotta have your agent, your home inspector, your title company, and your lender. Those are the key people that you wanna have in that. Anything else on the lending side of pre-approval?
Yeah, so just in general, what do we look for when we approve someone? We look at three pieces of puzzle, so to say. We look at credit, income, and assets. We pull the credit. We can pull we can do soft pull in the beginning just to, so there is no inquiry on your report. And we look at, your current activities. Did you open any new credit cards or any other type of loans? So when you are getting ready to apply for a mortgage, you wanna make sure that not to do anything to your credit that might impact it. Sometimes clients like to consolidate 5 cards into one and close others. That could actually hurt your credit score, or they buy a car and then they come and want to buy a house, but now that car payment is hurting their qualifications and you qualify for lower amount because of that. So we look at that, we look at income. Are you employed? Are you self-employed? Do you work full-time or part-time? Are you on variable income or just a base salary? So we look at all that. We look at couple of 2 years, typically W-2s if you're self-employed, and 2 years of tax returns. We look at 1 month of pay stubs, and we determine, what income we can use. If somebody has 2 jobs, we look at how many years you've been on those 2 jobs, or if there are any recent changes to the jobs, the job structure or income structure. And if anything, you think that, might be changing in the near future, you always want to notify the lender that I'm thinking to change my job, or I'm thinking to go from full-time to part-time, or any changes. You want to make sure that you talk to the lender before you do any of that, just not to jeopardize your qualifications. And also we look at assets. So if you put in money down, we need to see where money coming from. We look at 2 months of bank statements, and we'll look at activities during that 2 months period. Do you have any deposits? That income deposit, or maybe it's a large deposit. Where did large deposit come from? We have to document it, because maybe it was a loan, you borrowed money from someone, you need to pay back. Or maybe it was a cash deposit, and cash deposit we can't really document because cash is cash, right? Cash is king, but not in this situation. We don't like to see cash. If you expecting a gift from someone, just give the lender heads up, I'm gonna get a gift, because in most cases gift is acceptable. It's just we need to see who is giving the gift, which way, and there's easy way to receive and document the gift, or there's a hard way to document the gift. So the lender would tell you what's the best way for you to do it, so you're prepared, instead of you depositing the money and after the fact lender finds out and you need to provide 10 different documentations for that. So it's better just to give heads up ahead of time. So that's how we actually qualify someone, and we look at how we know how much you qualify for. We look at your income and we look at your liabilities, and what percentage of your income will go towards monthly liabilities, including whatever you have right now on your credit report, minimum payments on credit cards, car loans, student loans, and future mortgage payments. So we call it debt to income ratio, or DTI. That's an important factor in qualifying someone. And different programs have different ratios. Typically it's around 50%. So, if your income, let's say $10,000 a month, just to give a round number, right? And 50% ratio is the maximum allowed. It means that you can borrow money up to $5,000 a month. You can have up to $5,000 a month payment, including whatever your current obligations are and future mortgage payments. So if right now you have a car loan and credit cards totaling $2,000 a month, it leaves us with $3,000 towards mortgage payment. So that's how and what that mortgage payment translates into, sales price wise, we look at how much you're gonna put as a down payment. So that's how we determine what's your maximum. So I think that covers it all. Do you have any questions?
Any CD or anything that was acceptable?
Say it again?
CD, any
CD
If I
account?
have $300,000 CD. That
CD
is
account? Yeah, CD accounts are fine because those are,
Bank accounts are on.
bank accounts, checking, savings, CDs, stocks,
No problem.
401k,
Only
some-
loan is a problem.
the cash is a problem.
No, not cash, loan from someone else.
Oh, loan, correct, right.
If I buy a loan,
Well, I mean,
if I take a loan from my son or my friends, that is acceptable.
well, so then if you taking a loan from them, we're gonna ask what are the terms? How much?
Unsecured loans are as a gift.
Gift is gift.
As my son, he give me
Your son is
50,000.
giving you a gift, in most cases it's acceptable.
Yeah,
so-
16,000 up to the limit, what is that?
There's really no limit for that.
No, but the gift, there is a limit from IRS.
From IRS, but that
Six-
is something that you figure
Right.
out with the tax
From three,
person.
4 people, so that is
But for the
acceptable.
mortgage company, we don't really have the limit on that. So if your son is giving you a gift, it's fine as long as you buy its primary residence. So there's some rules around the gifting. Like if you buy an investment property, gift is not allowed, for example. But on other cases, it is acceptable. That's why it's better to check with the lender before getting a gift, if gift is allowed. So there are some programs, maybe niche programs that you're trying to get, and it happens that this program doesn't allow gift, so you just want to make sure that it's acceptable for the lender.
And that's why it's important to talk to the lender first and one of the first steps, because if you go onto a mortgage calculator online and you just punch in what you think you can do, what you think your payments
Suppose
are
if
gonna
I
be.
in my bank, I have a 500,000, I need loan 200,000. So for that, you will not count 5,000, you will accept that.
But still gonna look at your income. We still need to
Okay.
have enough income.
It is personal saving as a retirement fund and everything.
Yeah, even though the fact that you have a lot of money in your account is always a plus, but we still need to make sure that you have sufficient income to
Yes.
make the mortgage payment.
And it is already tax paid income that you can see what is called the IRS tax return.
If you're self-employed, we're gonna look at the tax returns.
Yes,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's what we look at.
So, let's say you're not employed, but you have a lot of money, how does that work?
We do have program that they call it asset dissipation. That's when we use assets as income. And depending on the program, we might take that asset and divide it by 360 months. Some you divide it by 280 months, and whatever number comes, after the division, that's your income. That's what we would use. And if you receive any other type of income, maybe alimony, child support, social security, disability, it's still considered income. That doesn't have to be just W-2 or self-employed.
Retirement benefit also considered as income that,
Pension, definitely.
no, as we brought our money from as a retirement fund from India, that is accounted as income.
And
That is on the bank, that came directly back, transactions.
only if you claim it on tax returns.
Yes,
If
it is
it's
also.
foreign income and it's claimed on tax returns, we can
Yes,
use that.
that is everything is claimed.
I'm glad you're here to answer those questions. All right, any other questions? Okay, okay, so next step is to start the home search. So now that you've gotten with Tatiana or whoever your lender is, you figured out what your budget is, we're gonna start looking for the properties. Most people right now are searching for properties on Real Scout, or not Real Scout, Redfin, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, places like that. Those places are okay, you can use those. The negative to them is, let's use Zillow for example. So Zillow will check, they scrub the multiple listing service, and they do it every certain time frame. So when you're looking at a certain property, you can actually look on there and it'll say Zillow last checked 14 hours ago or 48 hours ago. So the challenge with that is when the market is moving really quickly, the data you have may be 14 hours old. And the other thing with Zillow is a lot of times if the agent puts the information into the multiple listing service in the wrong field, or if there's, for example, if there's an HOA fee and a condo fee, Zillow won't necessarily pull both of those. So you look at a property thinking it's only got a $100 a month HOA fee, but you miss the fact that there's a $700 a month condo fee. So it's good resource, but it shouldn't be your only resource. So what we do with our clients is we use what's called Real Scout, and SK, that's what we're sending to you. And what Real Scout does is it's a direct feed from the multiple listing service. It's updated every the last number I heard was 22 minutes. It gets updated with what's going on. So you see the properties when they're coming on the market, and you also see the properties when they go off the market. So you don't get excited about a property and find out it's under contract. So that's the first source is the Real Scout. Okay, so that gives you direct access to the data that we as realtors have. The only way you can get into Real Scout is through a realtor. It's not something that you can just go onto a website and sign up for. The next thing, so that's what we call the public market. Those are the properties that everybody is seeing. What you want to try to do, especially in a seller's market, is you want to try to find properties that people are not seeing. You want to try to find off-market deals. This is one of the reasons why you want to hire a realtor in the beginning, because if you go with a realtor and you look at a property in a certain neighborhood, so for example, if you go with Kelly or me and look at a property, you don't like the property, but you love the neighborhood, we're actually going to market that neighborhood to try to find other sellers that maybe are not on the market, to try to find you an off-market deal so you're not competing with everybody for the property. The other thing is our brokerage, we have an app called the First Up app. So Samson Property has 6,000 agents in the Northern Virginia market. When a property is registered as a listing with a listing agent, that property cannot be publicly marketed to anybody outside of the brokerage until it is on the multiple listing service so that everybody can see it. But we are allowed to market that property inside of our brokerage. So if somebody signs a listing, like right now, let's say they have a seller that says, hey, I want to wait until spring when the market picks up, let's go ahead and sign the listing, but I don't want to go on the market till then. That agent's going to put that property in First Up. We're going to have access to that property. So we may be able to find you an off-market deal there. So your search is not just what's on the internet, it's also what can we find you off-market through our brokerage, and what can we find you off-market through our marketing efforts. Okay, so those are the different aspects of trying to search for the property. Let's see, we also have, 3 to 4 hours a day, I am on the phone prospecting. I'm looking for buyers for our sellers and sellers for our buyers. And I built up what's called a would sell list. These are people who were, let's say, on the market 6 months ago, their property expired. They would sell it if they got a good offer, but they just don't want to go through the market again. These are people that were for sale by owners that couldn't sell, or they're just people that's like, yeah, bring me a good offer and I'll sell it. So we have this would sell list, and so when we get a buyer, we pull up the data and see, okay, what property matches do we have? And sometimes we can find a property that way for our buyers as well. And these aren't even properties that are in our brokerage. These are just properties that we've just come across as we've been doing this prospecting for the last 5 years. Ooh, zoom in on that one. Okay, prospecting. So viewing the properties. So when you get down to the point of being ready to set up your search for properties, we're gonna look at the price, we're gonna look at the features of the property, the location. Those are the main things that we're gonna look at. And then once you start searching for properties, buyers really don't understand, like, are they supposed to buy the first property they walk into? Should they look at 30 properties before they buy? If you're new to the market, you really don't have a perspective on that. So what we found with our buyers, the average number of showings for our buyers to get a buyer under contract is 12 and a half showings. We've done it in as little as 2 to 3 showings. They walked in and fell in love with something they loved, or found something they loved. And we've gone as high as 46 showings. And we've done 46 showings for buyers that have not purchased, but we had one buyer that it took them, I don't know, I think it was like 45 showings and 7 offers before they finally got a property. And they were down to the deadline, to the point that that last weekend, they were gonna have to re-sign their lease on Monday. On that Friday, we put in, I think, 3 offers, and they got one of them. So it was, yeah, so they had kind of been through
They
it.
were
This
going
was-
through it, that was when the
Yeah.
market was just
Yeah.
insane,
Yeah,
but,
so, so you gotta be careful, but that 12 and a half is an average. In this market, it's realistic to at least have put an offer in by this 12 and a half mark. So if we go out with our buyers, with our clients, if we go out and we look at 10 properties is the number that we have kind of set. If we look at 10 properties and we haven't put an offer in, then we'll sit down with the buyer and we'll say, okay, we're missing something. Is it the criteria? Is it your motivation? Are you really wanting to buy a house? Is it the location that we're looking at? Is it the price point? What do we need to do to fine tune this? Because we don't want to waste y'all's time getting out there and looking at properties. Going and look at a property, it's a 45-minute to an hour commitment for each property by the time you drive to it and tour the property. So that's a kind of a benchmark that we set, and it seems to work well for our buyers. It kind of fine tunes us in and gets us focused on what we're looking for. All right, so we've done the search. So here's where we are so far. We've built our team. We've gotten the lender pre-approval, so we know what we can afford. And another thing on the pre-approval is you don't want to start looking before, because let's say you only approve for 700, but you're looking at $1 million, thinking you can do that. Now 700 is going to look bad to you, and you're going to be disappointed no matter what you get.
and we've had it happen vice versa too, where
Yes.
people thought they could only afford, I think it was 600,000, and then after getting their pre-approval, they learned it was a lot more, and they're like, what in the world?
Yeah.
So it can go both ways.
Yeah, so that's important. Then we start our home search and we start trying to find you those properties. And you want to, again, actively find the properties. That's really, really important. In fact, we just put some clients under contract on a property, and they went under contract 3 days ago on the property that was next door to the one that like excited them for looking. So they're really excited about what they got. And then their second place neighborhood, we just got a call today that they're trying to sell, but they're off market. So we've got a backup for them. If this deal falls through, we got a backup that we can go in and look at that. So you really want to have those options. We start the home search. Now, when you find a property and it's time to write an offer, that's where the fun really kind of begins. So we have to have that pre-approval so that we can go through the process. I'm not going to go through all the details of this because this is specifically how Kelly and I do it. But the important thing on this is when it comes time to write your contract, it's not a, hey, we want to write the offer, 30 minutes later you go and you're signing the offer and send it over. It's a process because you have to go through all of your contingencies. We have to go through all of your, the prices, the earnest money deposit, which we'll dive into that stuff here in a few minutes. But the general idea when you're writing your offer is your agent, the goal for the agent is, if you imagine there's like a control panel, and there's all these buttons that you can push that can make your offer the strongest offer possible. So we'll just give you an inspection contingency, for example. There are 4 options with an inspection contingency. There's one that's extremely strong and there's one that's extremely weak. So we go through and we explain all 4 of those options, what the risks are for each, what the benefits are for each, and then your job is to say, that's the button I'm willing to push. I'm not willing to go with the strongest, I don't like the risk. Let's go with option 2. And we do that with every contingency in the contract. And that way we custom build it to what your risk tolerance is. And then we will tell you, like when we're about to submit the offer, we'll say, okay, these are our strong points, these are our weak points. And then if you lose on that offer, we always go back to the seller's agent and we find out where did we lose, what happened there. So we know what the next strategy needs to be on the next offer, okay? So you go through that process, we get the offer put together. For us, it's typically the first offer, from the first Zoom call to kind of go through the terms up until you sign the offer is typically about 3 to 4 hours. You're not on the phone the whole time with that. That's us doing back office stuff and everything. Your time on it's probably about 45 minutes. Once you submit the offer, it goes to the seller. The seller can either accept the offer, and if they accept it, they just sign it and you're good to go. They can counter the offer, which means that one of those terms on there they don't like, they cross it out, they write what they do right, and they send it back to us. If they counter the offer, then you guys get to look at those terms, and if you agree to them, you can sign the contract, and then it's ratified. If you don't agree, you can counter, cross out what you don't like, send it back to them. And you can go back and forth like this until the last person signs the contract agreeing to all the terms. Once that last signature is on the contract, we have a ratified contract. And a ratified contract is a binding agreement. You are now contractually obligated to buy that property. So it's really important that you understand everything about the contract that you're writing. So what we do is after the contract is written, we send it over to you, and then I get on another Zoom call with you, and we go paragraph by paragraph through the contract, so you know exactly what you're signing. So they can either ratify the contract, they can counter the contract, or they can just reject it. They can just say, you know what, we're not even gonna counter, but we're not gonna take it. And if that happens, we can either rewrite a new offer or move on to a new property. Okay? So that is the offer writing process. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so once we've written the offer, we have a ratified contract. If there are any contingencies in the contract, or if there are any timelines in the contract, it begins that date of the last signature. Now, a day in Northern Virginia technically ends at 9:00 p.m. So if the contract is ratified at 9:30 p.m., it technically ratified on the next day. So you actually get a little bit of an extra timeline in there. But that's an important time to remember because all deadlines will end at 9 p.m.
And real estate days are calendar days, lending days are business days.
Yep, so those are all details to keep in mind. Okay, so we got the contract, we have a ratified contract, so now it comes time to start sending in deposits. So this is probably where you're gonna wanna take some notes, because this is where we're gonna talk about the money. Okay, this is the fun part, the other fun part. All right, so the first thing that I wanna talk about is what you can expect at the closing settlement table. So we're gonna go through these items. All right, so the first thing, so what I'm talking about here is that step 10. Okay, so this is the money that you have to have when you go in to sign the paperwork to buy the property. So the first thing is gonna be your down payment. Your down payment can be anywhere from 0% if you're a VA borrower up to whatever you wanna put down, but typically it's between 3 and 20%. Again, that down payment is due at the settlement table. It's not due when you sign the contract. The next thing is gonna be closing costs. In Northern Virginia, closing costs are anywhere from 2 to 3% of the sales price. A lot of buyers, especially first-time home buyers, aren't aware that there are closing costs on top of the down payment. So that's something to really consider. If you're looking at a $700,000 house, you need to be prepared for about, it's $21,000 in closing costs.
But that's why it's important to get pre-approved, because
Yes.
that's, you get the estimate with the whole breakdown, and you'll realize that, oh, it's not only the down payment,
Right,
but there's
right.
a closing cost.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. Now, if you're in Maryland, what's 4 to 5% closing costs? I mean, it's
higher.
crazy there, yeah. The commission, okay, so buyer agent commission, Kelly and I charge 3% buyer agent commission. This is something that, based on the agreement, I'm not gonna dive into this too much unless you guys have questions. Based on the agreement, typically, the wording on the agreement is that you as the buyer are agreeing to pay the 3% for the commission to the buyer's agent. That commission request goes into the sales contract. So when we write your sales contract, we put in there's a place in the contract to put that commission in there to get the seller to cover the commission. So that's a part of the terms that get negotiated. So
There is some change in the rule for the seller.
the only thing that changed, so they did change the rule. The only rule that changed was prior to August 17th, there was a field in the multiple listing service where the seller had pre-agreed to what they were gonna pay.
Seller commission.
Yeah. That field is no longer there. The seller no longer pre-agrees to anything.
Well,
They agree on the
that
contract.
is hidden, you can give them whatever.
Yeah.
You decide.
Yeah. So we give them the contract, and then that's just another term that we negotiate on. So that's the seller commission. Some brokerages have what's called an administrative fee. Actually, most brokerages have an administrative fee. That says $345 for ours. Ours is actually $395 now.
Yeah,
But that is due from the buyer at settlement.
and I think it's still Samson is the lowest brokerage
Yeah, it's the
fee.
lowest that we've seen, yeah.
Broker fee.
So these are that's the cash that you would expect to have when you go to settlement. Now, there are some expenses that happen outside of settlement. The first one is the earnest money deposit. Chanel, are you familiar with the EMD and what that is? Okay, so when you write the contract, usually, so when we make this slide, it's 3 to 5% of the sales price. If you want to be competitive on a property, you still go with the 3 to 5%. You can get by with 2 to 3% now. So if you're looking at a $700,000 property, that would be between 14 and 21,000. The earnest money deposit, the way we write our contracts, is due to the title company that you chose 3 to 5 days after the ratification occurs. Now, those 3 to 5 days are business days. So if we ratify on a Saturday or Sunday, and it's a 5-day, we would have until Friday to get that in. But that money gets deposited to the title company. It goes into an escrow account. It does not go to the seller. And it's the security deposit for the contract. And it's basically protected by any contingencies that you have. And when you get to settlement, whatever your earnest money deposit is contributed towards your down payment. So it's not an additional expense, it's just a pre-deposit. Okay. The only risk to that earnest money deposit is if you default on the contract, which means that you don't close for some reason outside of a contingency, then the seller has the right to make a claim against it. So we do everything we can to protect you guys against that, make sure that doesn't happen. All right, so that's gonna be due at the time of settlement, or 3 to 5 days after the ratification date. The next thing is, if you didn't do a pre-offer inspection, and you were able to get an inspection contingency, you will have to pay for a home inspection. Usually, most houses around $500 to $600. If it's a bigger house, it could be up to $1,200. If it's a condo, it could be as low as $350. So it just depends on the size of the property. The negative to a pre-offer inspection is that, let's say you go and you do a pre-offer inspection, you like the house, you paid $500 for the inspection, you put the offer in and you didn't get the property. You may end up having to pay for 3 or 4 of those, but it's worth it for the peace of mind to know what you're buying. If you get the offer on the contingency, or if you get the contingency inside of the offer, then usually you're only paying for one and you have the choice on how you want to handle that when the report comes back. Wood destroying insect inspection, those are your termites, carpenter bees, things like that. That's usually $40, $45, about 40 to 70, but we haven't seen a 70 in a long time. That's another thing that you can pay, or that you may have in your contract. This can be paid at the time of service, or a lot of people pay it at settlement. Okay. And then the appraisal fee, this is the lender's world. Typically, as soon as you ratify the contract, the lender, correct me if any of this is wrong, the lender's gonna send you a link for ordering the appraisal. And the reason they have to order that appraisal is?
So appraisal is professional opinion of the value of the property, right? So we want to make sure that you're buying this property at the market price, at the market value. So because we will lend you money based on sales price or appraised value, whichever is lower, right? So let's say you put in 10% down, and just for easy numbers, easy math, you buy property at $1 million and you are financing 90% of it. So you put in 10% down, you're getting $900,000 loan. But if appraisal comes in lower than $1 million, the bank is gonna give you 90% of the appraised value, because now that's the maximum, that's a fair market value, that's what we're gonna go by. If appraisal comes in over $1 million, it's just good news for you that you got really good deal on this on the property. So that's what we look at, and we do order appraisal. Typically we wait for, I wait for Sean and Kelly to tell me, go ahead and order it, maybe after you do home inspection, just to make sure that you're not incurring any fees if you want to get out of the contract based on the home inspection, right? So I order appraisal, I ask to pay up front, and we know how much it costs up front. So you prepay it, basically just like earnest money deposit is prepayment, the same with appraisal fee, it's a prepayment, because we have to pay a third party person to do the inspection. And so when we receive the appraisal, if everything is good, that's it, we're moving forward. If appraisal comes in lower, then it depending on the contract, you either renegotiate the price, or you can walk out, or if you did not have any appraisal contingency on the contract, you just agree on the, paying $1 million even though it came in 100, whatever, lower. So that's something that, we would actually discuss before we write a contract. If you are, considering waiving appraisal contingency and there could be a possibility of lower appraisal, we will discuss it ahead of time. That's the teamwork comes into play when I tell you, okay, it's, Sean and Kelly tells me it's possible that appraisal comes in 50,000 lower, and you're okay with that because you really want this house, you don't really care. And I tell you, okay, so when it happens, you either have to bring the extra 50,000, or maybe we just distribute whatever down payment you have right now a little bit different ways, and you still bring the same amount to the table. It's just maybe your rate changes, or there's additional charge in a monthly payment. So we call it mortgage insurance. So it all depends on the situation, but we'll discuss it so you are prepared and you know what to expect when it.
Before we put the offer
Yeah.
in,
Before
make
we do
sure.
the offer,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we're not putting you at
Discussed,
risk.
so that you make the decision, but, and that is where it comes in, because we'll do, appraisal reports before the appraiser comes in. Sean will do the research and put together the whole thing to like really show the proof of value as best we can to try to get that to happen. But if you love it anyway, then, and Tatiana says, hey, you're in it, she's in it, and says waive appraisal, well, that's another button we can push for getting your your offer accepted,
But definitely, before they write offer for you, they will tell you their opinion on, it's
The value.
overpriced or it's underpriced. They don't even know what they do, and it's a great deal. Just run with it, right? So, which happens,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You
It does,
just
yeah.
never know.
It goes both ways on that.
Yeah.
They kind of like appraisers, right? But of course, there's no guarantee what appraisal will come at, because again, it's professional opinion. You're gonna ask 3 different appraisers to appraise the same property, and variance in the value could be like 10% of variation.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go in deep details why it happens, but it happens, and they might use different properties to compare to, or they evaluate them slightly different than we would evaluate.
That's why we like to help them out.
Yeah, we like to depend on human laziness. We like to do their homework for them and give it to them and describe everything to them. Yeah. Do you guys understand what a contingency is?
Yep.
Yeah, you're okay with that.
Yes,
Okay.
appraisal it can be contingency also.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Based on that, we can reject or accept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, based on what happens in that. So, okay. All right, and again, that appraisal is prepaid. So everything here, you need to be prepared to have that money kind of on hand as you're going through the process. Everything above is due at the settlement table. All right, any questions on the fees? No, okay. All right, so we've gotten through the appraisal. Home inspection, again, this doesn't happen very often, about 30% of the time right now. But if you do have a home inspection, usually we try to get it done within 3 to 5 days of the ratification date. That can strengthen your offer. That's one of the ways to make it stronger while still having that. Typically, the buyer, our clients like to be there for the inspection, but what they'll do is, like, let's say it's a typical townhouse, that's gonna take about 2 hours, 2.5 hours for the inspection. They'll show up for the last hour. And then our inspector, the one that we use, will take them through the house, give them a summary tour of the house, show them what they found so that you know exactly what you're buying. So you want to allow yourself for time for that. The other thing too is we had in step 5, fulfilling all the lender requirements. The first probably 5 to 10 days after you go under ratification is going to be chaotic for you as the buyer, unless you've done a pre-offer full approval. And the reason for that is her underwriters are going to be asking her for all kinds of documents to prove everything that has been presented. So they're going to give you a financial enema. And it's painful, but but that's what they have to do.
Yeah, but if you've done it slowly before, then it makes this part a lot easier. So
Yeah.
you're not bombarded with home inspections and the getting your documentation and all of
And
that.
planning on moving and the packing and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
So-
that's why it's highly recommended to get fully approved prior to. It's free of charge, free of obligations. You
Yeah.
didn't find anything, decided not to buy. We're not gonna give you a loan without the property. We're not gonna
Right.
twist your arm, right?
Yeah.
But it just makes the whole transaction smoother for you because, and we can settle faster, right? We can write
Mhm.
aggressive contract, and in general, I can settle in 2 weeks. You wrote an offer on the 1st of October, by 14th I already can settle you. But if you don't have that full approval prior, you have to, it's gonna be animal, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna struggle because you're doing home inspections and you're trying to work at the same time and you need to submit earnest money deposit, and here I am bombarding with you, Chanel, give me this, give me
Yeah.
that. So you'll be like, get away from me.
Yeah.
But if you already fully approved, all I'm gonna ask is to e-sign updated documents, and that's it. And I'm doing my job on the back end that you're not gonna even notice.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing too is, so from step 4 to step 10 is typically a 30 to 45 day timeline. So if you put yourself in the mindset of a seller, okay, you just got an offer, and I'm telling you, I can give you all the money for your house 30 days from now, or I can give you all the money for your house 14 days from now. Which one of those are you gonna want? 14, that's right. So when you're working, you got that pre-approval and you've got all those protections, from 4 to 10 takes 14 days. So that's a way you strengthen your offer without it costing you more money. These terms, they all play a part in this. Okay. Okay, so we've got the home inspection done. If we had that, next step is the appraisal. You guys don't have anything to do with that. The appraiser goes out. We don't even talk to the appraiser because it has to be an objective opinion. We do sneak on a little package, but we don't really talk to them. So that happens. So after the appraisal happens, 3 days before your settlement, 3 business days before your settlement, there's a document, and it's federally required, right, that has to be received from your lender. It's called a closing disclosure. Tatiana usually has that out to you about 5 to 7 days before. But basically, this closing disclosure is their commitment, and what does that include?
So the closing disclosure is actually actual final numbers that you need to bring to settlement. In the beginning, I'm giving an estimate, and important actually fact about the estimate is the different lenders estimate it differently, give you different estimates. When you comparing lenders, what you need to look at is the interest rate and lender's charges, or charges affiliated with the interest rate, right? So like Sean was saying that their fee, brokerage fee is $3.45, right? Every lender has the same type of fees. And sometimes they call it origination fee, sometimes they call it underwriting and processing fee. They could divide it into different ones so it looks like they're lower. But when you combine them together, it's actually higher. So that's what you look at when you're comparing lenders, and the fees associated with the interest rate, meaning discount points. So every rate has a price, right? And we have to be at a certain price. So we give you, let's say I give you a quote with rate of 6.5% with 0 points, meaning you just get this rate, you don't pay anything in addition of the closing cost to get to that rate. But if you pay 1% of the loan amount, for example, which would be 1 discount point, then your rate gets reduced to X amount, and typically it's just 0.25%, 0.25%. If it's more than that, typically it's a good deal. But when I talk to you about locking the interest rate, we actually skip that point. When you get under contract, that's when you talk to the lender. You can lock the rate in, which protects us from fluctuations, right, of market fluctuations. So, and we'll discuss, this rate comes with 0 points, and that rate comes with $4,000 in points. The difference in the monthly payment is X, it's gonna take you 20 months to break even. Does it make sense for you or not? How long you gonna keep the property for? You know, is it gonna be a long-term investment for you or not? Or are you expecting to sell it very soon? So those play crucial role and factor in, you know, do you want to pay those additional discount points or not? So sometimes lenders give you very low rate, so it's kind of like a carrot. Oh my gosh, look at this rate, it's 5%. And then when you get the estimate from them, they charge 2% origination fee by default, and it also has 3% discount points. So you're gonna pay $25,000 to get this 5% interest rate, which is gonna save you $300 a month. Does it make sense for you to do or not? So I'm just throwing numbers, it's not exact numbers, of course, but that you need to compare and analyze what makes sense for you. And you don't just look at the bottom line, how much you need to bring to settlement, because some lenders, we always, we know our fees, we don't know everybody else's fees, right? We can take a good guess, but it's still an estimate, and some lenders like to underestimate, some like to overestimate. I like to overestimate just because I would prefer you to have a nice, pleasant surprise at the end that you don't need to bring 50,000, you need to bring 48, versus that you actually need to bring 53,000, so you need to find extra $3,000 you weren't accounted for. So, but that's an estimate. The closing disclosure is actually an actual numbers in there. So because we talk to the title company, we work with them, we know how much their fees are, we know how much sales taxes are going to be, or title insurance, or if it's, let's say, buying a condominium, we know already what condo complex asks you to pay up front. They might have their setup fees, welcome fees, right? Or maybe they ask you to pay a couple of months of condo dues up front. So we don't know that in the beginning when we do an estimate, but at the end we have that final numbers. And loan estimate and closing disclosure, they're uniform document. Every lender will have it in the same format, and it's very similar. Loan estimate and closing disclosure, they have similar structure, so it's easier for you to compare estimate to the final number, so it's not too confusing for you. Yeah, but the lender always, you know, I always go over the final numbers with the buyers and explain to them all the charges. And
she does. We usually do that with every other lender. We sit down and go through it's called the ALTA, the closing document, and we'll call the ones that have talked to you and go, oh yeah, we know, we already put it.
Right.
Yeah, so that closing disclosure is the commitment. That's their sheet. The loan is clear, it's ready to fund, everything is good to go. You sign off on it, and we're moving forward.
yeah, and I send them to Kelly and Sean for them to review as well, just to make sure that there's nothing extra, no extra fees that got sneaked in, like survey that you didn't want or something.
Or the pest inspection, because sometimes the buyers will end up paying for that, and title didn't know, or they didn't get the invoice, and it's like, oh no, take that off, it's already paid for. So that's why we see it, is to make sure all that's on the same page.
All right, so you get that commitment letter. That's 3 business days minimum before settlement. And then once that's done, the day before settlement, or if you're having an afternoon settlement, we can do it in the morning of settlement. But typically we like to do it the day before in case there's an issue. We will do what's called a pre-settlement walkthrough, where we go to the property. By this time, the sellers are usually moved out unless there's some kind of a rent back or something. But we get to make sure they didn't damage the property when they were moving out. And so we're looking for things. Basically, the property has to be sold to you in the same condition it was on the date that you wrote the offer. So when we're going through and doing this final walkthrough, we're not looking for, a place where a piece of furniture was, so the paint was a little bit faded versus the rest of the house. Okay, we're not looking for things like that. We're looking for the water heater burst, or they took the Took all the light fixtures and changed them out for cheap Walmart light fixtures, and they wanted the expensive chandeliers. They took the refrigerator, they took things that are supposed to be there with the property. So we're making sure that you're getting the property that you said you were gonna buy. We do a walkthrough, we do a checklist, we sign off on that. Assuming everything goes well there, we go to the settlement table, and at the settlement table, it usually takes about an hour. Most people are in and out in about 30 minutes, but if you have questions, it can take us up to an hour. You sign all the documents and you get the keys for the property at that point. You get possession of the property. A nuance to that is Virginia is, the rules for Virginia is the transaction is actually completed when the deed has been recorded. So let's say that we close the property at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Well, they can't record the deed even though they do it electronically. The courthouse is already closed. So the deed is actually not gonna or the transaction is not actually finalized until the following Monday. You still get possession of the property, you can still start moving the stuff in, but there is that little bit of a nuance that's there. But for the most part, if you sign before noon, the transaction's done, everything's recorded that same day. So you get the keys, you get access to the property, and it is your property.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So Kelly and I like to send these graphics every time you hit a new threshold. We'll send out this graphic to our clients, and it has a little bit of an explanation of where you are and what to expect next, because it all feels like you're in a dark area and all you can see is the next step.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why we like to do this bird's eye view, so you can at least get an idea of what's going on. There are a lot of details in each one of these steps that we didn't go over, but do you all have any questions about any of this process?
So, I know there's a lot that comes into play when you're doing like the closure, what did you call it, the final disclosure or something?
The closing disclosure?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, there's no way we can do exact numbers early on. Like right after let's say right after you talk to the seller and you guys come to an agreement, can you do like the final numbers right then and there?
It's not possible because there's a lot of work that needs to be done before we can provide those numbers, and it's a lot of people involved. Like we put in the credit, we check in the properties in flood zone, you setting up insurance. We don't know what insurance is going to be because you're gonna be shopping for that, right? The appraisal fee, sometimes if there's we need to do a rush appraisal or we need to do re-inspection because they found something when they did an inspection that they said something needs to be fixed, and then when it's fixed, the appraiser needs to go back, so they charge to come back. And then also the title company, they also rely on a county, for example, to tell if seller already paid their second or first half of taxes, right? So it means that if they already paid, it means that you have to give them prorated credit for the portion that you own the house, but they already prepaid for it. Or, they wait for the HOA, homeowner association or condo association to give their figures also to say, oh, you have to collect 2 months or a quarter for worth of HOA dues, or we have the fees, or seller already prepaid a whole year up front, so we have credit on their account, so you as a new buyer needs to give them prorated credit. So let's say they prepaid, you're buying right now, right? And they prepaid HOA until December 31st, but you become owner starting October 31st, right? So from 31st to December 31st, it's your fees, you're responsible for it, right? But seller already paid for it, but you have to give them credit for your portion that you own. So there's really no way for us to know that ahead of time. There's logistics, how soon everybody works, so how fast, because if you just got under contract and you settle in 30 days, the title company is not gonna reach out to HOA right away because they're working on settlements that are happening right now and not in 30 days. And also HOA might not even respond to them fast
Yeah.
enough, and they can say, well, we're 1 month ahead, why are you asking for that? We don't know, maybe seller's gonna pay something.
Or they have a new annual meeting and their dues have changed from when they
Yeah.
first gave the docs to 30 days.
Approximately percentage.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's
It's usually pretty close. It's only when there's random things, like for
Yeah.
example, if the appraisal comes up short, that's gonna change your numbers.
yeah,
Oh,
If,
okay.
if there's an
Yeah.
inspection repair that we find and the seller agrees to cover it and give you a credit.
That is a
that's gonna
fraction,
change your-
not that much.
it's
Yeah,
not that
it's not
much.
very much,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the total is your 3% closing cost plus minus the
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you prepare for 3% closing costs, you're pretty much gonna be
Yeah.
covered.
And
Unless
then,
you decide to buy down the interest
Yeah,
rate, that is
exactly.
gonna be higher than
Well,
that.
Approximately 3.1 or 2%, close to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
what won't change is your sales price and the interest rate once you've locked and the down payment, like the terms that you've
Okay.
agreed, so those won't change.
Unless the
Okay.
appraisal comes back low and you negotiate the sales price at that point. That's the only
Right.
time the
Well,
sales
right,
price will
right.
change.
But that's something that you'll be aware of, like
Yeah.
step by step. Any appraisal stuff, any home inspections, you'll make that call based on the contingencies that are in your
And that
contract.
can only go down. Your sales price won't typically, I can't think of a situation where it would go up,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And I typically, very close to, estimate to right on the money
Yeah.
or very close to it,
Yeah.
or actually overestimate it.
Yeah,
So as a first-time home buyer, I know there's like a lot of programs for my
First-time.
site. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do those work?
Yeah, so we have a few different programs available. It depends where you're going to buy. If it's in Virginia, is it gonna be Virginia?
I don't know yet.
Okay, so Virginia has their programs, Maryland has programs, DC has their own first-time home buyers program that offer grants, 100% financing, just maybe discounted interest rates, or something specific to maybe to your profession, or some counties have this special incentives or grants. So that's something that I would discuss with you when I do application and ask you how much money you have available for close, which will actually gives me a good idea if you need to look for those grants or first time home buyer programs, and I ask what monthly payment you're going to be comfortable with, because in a lot of cases people qualify for more than they want to spend, so I will know exactly where we need to look at, and I might give you a few different options. I'll tell you, okay, here's the program with 10% down, 3%, 0, 1%, 3.5%. So there are different options available, and then you will see, okay, well, I can put 3% down, but I would rather not. What happens then? And I will tell you, okay, with 3% down, this is your terms, this is your interest rate. With 0 money down, your interest rate is higher because you're doing 100% financing. Typically, they have higher interest rates, and then you're gonna determine, okay, this is too much. I would rather put 3% down, or it's comfortable for me still. I'm okay with. I would rather keep cash and just have a maybe higher monthly payment, which I'm still comfortable with. So that's how we analyze with you together what program works better for you.
Okay. So changing subjects. So let's say I own the property now, I have possession of it, something breaks, do I use the escrow money? Or is it now completely on my own?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you are you saying after you bought the property?
Right.
Okay. Are you asking, so after you bought the property and you've settled on it, like you now own the property and something breaks,
Yes.
the escrow money is done.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
that,
Okay.
that's gone, that's good, that's gone to the seller, you
Okay.
paid for the house, so now you
Oh,
you
escrow
have
is the seller.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the escrow money is just there So let's say you did a $15,000 earnest money deposit,
Mhm.
and your 20% or whatever your down payment was gonna be 50,000. You would have your 15,000 already there, you would just bring
Oh,
an
yeah.
additional 35,000.
Oh.
And then that all goes along with the money from the lender to the seller, and then they pay off all their debts and everything, and then you bought the house.
And let's say it was a 0%, like you got that kind of program, whatever was left over, they would give back to you at the settlement
Yeah.
table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But then once you own the house, then
It's not
yeah,
on
any
you.
repairs are yours, yeah, that's the beauty of homeownership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get a home warranty.
Yeah, so that's, so you can get a home
Yeah.
warranty that covers your
Oh.
plumbing, electricity, things like that, helps you cover expenses of things that come up. So if you buy an older property, we always recommend that you get a home warranty.
Is that gonna be included in the contract or no?
Usually.
That's
You
separate.
can include it, but usually we don't, not in the seller's
Okay.
market. Yeah, it's like $600 a year, you
Oh,
usually
okay.
get that outside.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's
That's right.
For 2 years or 1 year?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's how that.
With the
works.
warning that no home warranty company is fun to work with if you have to, but
They're all
they are
horrible.
helpful.
But
That's
it's
fine.
financially worth it. We
Yeah.
have things that go wrong, we usually pay it out of pocket, but if it's something that's gonna potentially be.
That's
big,
not
that's
true.
when
We had
call
to
a
replace our
warranty.
stove and I'm like, this is gonna be a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Not that I can think of. No.
SK, you got any questions?
No.
Okay, so I know we went over a lot of information, and typically we'll do this buyer consultation one-on-one through Zoom and record it, and we can send it the link. Obviously we didn't. We have this, I don't know if that's gonna help or not, but, so a lot of times when you go through all this information like this, it can be kind of information overload. So sometimes it's helpful to continue the conversation one-on-one.
Yeah.
So if you guys, wanna do that, we have your email address, I'll email you guys, so we know how to get in touch with each other.
Yes.
But I'll send you an email and you can set up a time and all that. Is it okay if I get Tatiana your email
Yeah,
address as well?
absolutely.
Okay, and you guys, we can set up a time for, just kind of chatting one-on-one to kind of go into the details of everything at that point.
Another question, the prices will come down for the
Nope.
property?
Nope.
2 months.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. I got a chart
Oh,
for that. So this is a beautiful chart that Tatiana showed us a while back. This is from 1940 up until 2022. Those are the most recent stats. So in that time frame, that was what, 97 years?
Yeah.
No, so it was about 74 years, something like that. In that time frame, there were
82.
82. Yeah, where's my math? I'm kidding. Got two
82,
math.
I know.
So 82 years, so 73 of those years, the market finished up, but within a year. Now it might have been up 1%, but it finished up. Average is about 5% per year over the last
Every year,
45.
up.
It finished up, yeah. Only 7 years it finished down from the previous year. Most of those 7 years happened from 2008 to 2011. That's when we had the real estate crash. We had a couple of years in 1990, 1991. And then there was 1 year that was flat.
Not
so-
crash, but little bit lower.
Yeah, just a little bit lower. It could have been 1% lower. Yeah,
1% or 2%
Yeah.
lower. That's it.
exactly. Now, the 7, 8, 9, that was significant. Those were big drops, but that's not gonna happen again.
No, that is not going to happen.
Yeah. So you may see some fluctuations, like even if we get back into a normal market during the fall, prices will typically fall just a little bit, but then spring, they're back up, so you
Yes, up to
finish. the
December,
year-
little bit, the prices will be low.
Yeah, so it's.
1%, 1%, that will be.
If that, yeah. So that's kind of how it works, and if you look at it from an election cycle perspective,
Yes, election,
so each year, the election kind of, people kind of pull back during the election year, but 7 of the last 8 elections, the prices have gone up pretty significantly the following year. So we're expecting prices to go up again next year. Again, 2008 is the only year that didn't happen, that was the financial crisis.
And that's even if there's no party change,
Yeah,
it
it's no,
still
that
goes
is
up.
regardless of who wins.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no evidence, we're still short on inventory. We just went to a meeting yesterday and 2024 is gonna be the lowest number of transactions in the last 35 years. Prior to 2024, 2023 was the lowest number of transactions in the last 34 years
And that's
because
nationwide.
nationwide, because there's a housing shortage. So when there's more demand than there is supply, prices, just the force of the market, prices can't come down. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at. Now we see, some softening and a little bit of wavering, but that's why we look at that 7-day market report. But that softening or wavering might last for a week or two. It doesn't mean values are coming down. It's just you may not face 10 offers. You might just compete against 3 offers. So it's an opportunity.
And it's where you wanna remember, you marry the price and date the rate. Don't marry next year's price or in 6 months where it's higher when you can, if your rates go down, you can refinance. And there's not a maximum number of times you can refinance, right?
As long as it makes sense, and as long as there's benefit
That's
to
a
you.
benefit.
Within 2 months, maybe little 1 or 2%, because in winter people don't buy the houses.
So we haven't seen that happening. In fact, I don't have.
Get
Wait, just wait.
Do you have to?
I have something. Let me see if I can get to it here. Sorry, y'all. This is weekly market report. All right, so this was. This was the median sales price from September of 2023 to September of 2024. So with what you're saying with regards to prices going down, you'll see some dips in here, but if you look year over year, September 24 versus 2023, it was a 11% appreciation. This is Fairfax County. But SK, you're right, from December to January, the median sales price goes down. Yeah. But here's the thing about median sales price, and this is what's really important to understand. So the median sales price is,
Average.
No, it's not average, it is, here's my
Can you tell me
chart.
like stats?
Yes. So let's say you have 10 selections. We're gonna look at month 1. We have 10 properties that sold. You can see what they were values, 3 million to 1.5, and then 500,000 is useful to 220, okay? The median sales price is determined by the number that falls right in the middle.
Not an
It's
average.
not an average, it's a number that falls in the
Median,
middle.
yes, divided by 2.
Well, but it's not divided, because if you use
Then
an
it will be
average or a
average.
division, what'll happen is if you have a really high price, it's gonna skew that. So they just use the number that falls in the middle. So for month 1, it was 500,000. For month 2, all of these numbers are higher than that month. All of these numbers are higher than that month. But the one that fell right in the middle was 400,000. Okay, so the median sales price for month 2 was 400,000, month 1 was 500,000. So that's a 20% drop. So based on understanding and how the media would portray that $500,000 house is now worth $400,000. But that's not the truth. The truth is the house that fell right in the middle, the buying tendency of people was at a lower price. So when interest rates went up, the median sales price for a couple months kind of fell down, but it wasn't because house prices or values were dropping. It's because the buyers that were looking at $1 million could now only afford $800,000. So they were buying lower priced properties. But that $800,000 house was still worth $800,000. Actually, it was probably worth $810,000.
It was really sad for those buyers at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So median sales price is really helpful, but you have to be careful with it. You have to look at each individual property to see if the values of that property are coming down. So if a median
It
sales
could be
price,
confusing, the median.
It can
Yeah.
be.
it's very confusing. So when you see that January, the median sales price was $650, whereas in December it was, let's say, $675, that doesn't mean that house values dropped $25,000. That just means that's where people are
The
buying.
middle one was.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean that in June, that same house that was $650 was now $775. It's just that's where they were buying.
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
So.
I'm glad I got to pull that out.
Like I can see you're so happy.
So let's say I buy the house and I decide I've lived in it for a couple years, I've done upgrades and all that stuff, and now I want to sell.
Mhm.
How would that process look?
So you would find yourself an agent to run the numbers for
You
you.
call us back.
So,
You
yeah,
call us
so
back.
they're-
So
Yeah.
we're just gonna pretend like we're your agent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you buy the house, and then when you bought that house, that became the new value of the house, right? So assuming, let's say you paid $750 for the house, assuming the next comparable house that went on the market is gonna use yours as a comp, so it's probably gonna go at $775. So it's gonna kind of keep ticking up. It might be 1% or whatever, but there's gonna be a tick up. So at the end of that 2 years, we would come in, we would look at the property,
And look at what you've done to
look at
it.
what you've done to it. Hopefully the things that you did added value, not all upgrades add value to a property. So, you know,
If
consult
that's
us
something
before
you
you put
plan
money
to
into
do,
it.
let us know so that we can tell you where your biggest return on investment is and where to
Okay.
put the money. So
Yeah,
we can
yeah,
help
because
you
you don't wanna
strategize.
spend, you know, just because you take a 10-year-old roof and make it new, that's not gonna add new value to your house
Right.
because the roof was functional, you know?
Right.
So we would come in, we would run the valuation of the property, give you an idea of where we think it would sell. We would help you prep the property, we put it on the market, and then go through the sales process. But this time you'd be on the seller side of it.
Yeah, and we pay for photography. Sean and I do, not everybody does. We
Yeah.
pay for the photography, we pay for all the marketing, and we do the opposite of what we do for you as buyers. We contact our would buy list. It's like, hey, I might have buyers already in this area. We also put it on that 6,000 agents thing. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And
sometimes we can get them
calling-
sold off
Calling all the
market.
neighbors, we're mailing people and
Yeah.
all that.
Okay. And then, hold on, I lost my question.
Off-market properties are always cheaper than the competitive price.
Okay, so that's a good question. It depends on how savvy the seller is. If you come to me off market in our house, let's say our house is worth $500,000. I know the market. If you come to me off market and it's like the house is worth $500,000, we'll give you $450. I'm gonna say, well, no, I'd actually put it on the market and see if I can get more than 500,000. But if you come to me and you say, hey, you know what, I'll take it as is, I'll give you 525, I'll give you 515, or, you know, something a little bit above to entice me to not go through the hassle of putting it on the market, then that would give you the property. So are they cheaper? They're not cheaper in that you can get a deal unless the house is all beat up and, you know, or it's an estate and they don't want to do anything with it. Yes, you can find deals that way. But if it's a good property, you're probably gonna have to pay a little bit of an incentive to keep them from going on the market. But that incentive is gonna be less than what you would pay if they went on the market and you were bidding against 10 people for the property. Because now you're paying 15,000 more versus paying 50,000 more. So yes, it's cheaper, but it's not a discount, if that makes sense.
It is cheaper, little bit cheaper than the
Yeah, than if you went and bid it.
competition.
Yes, absolutely. So that's the goal. It's not to get you a discount on a property unless we find one that needs work. The goal is to find you a property where you're not competing with 10 other people to get that property. That's how we save you money, and we do that aggressive aspect of it.
Time period is the same,
Depends on the terms of the
closure
contract.
and everything.
Yeah, usually. But that seller may not be ready to move. They may want a 60-day closing, so they have time to pack up their stuff and leave. So it just really depends. It's seller dependent.
So, how does it work buying a foreclosed house versus like a new one?
Well, you're probably not gonna find a foreclosed house.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So right now, everybody that is in this market right now has so much equity, and they had to qualify for the loans. There wasn't the bad lending that happened before. So the current market is really stable. The foreclosure rate right now is so low that
The
it's.
people, the already loan is very cheap loan.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the simple.
They're
Yeah.
gonna sit.
Yeah. So, but a foreclosure process, you have to go through either a third-party auction company or the bank that has it. It just depends on the lender that has it. Same thing with short sales, and they're a pain. But and you're not gonna find one.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You can cross that out.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, I think foreclosure is less pain than short sale, which short sale you probably really not gonna find. The foreclosure maybe very
Difficult.
rare find, but in general, when bank already owns the property, you just buy it from the bank. From lender standpoint, there is no difference. I don't know if there's difference when you work with.
The contract's a little bit different,
The contract's
and there's no contingencies and things like that. Like you don't have those kind of protections.
There's a
because
risk
you're-
on it.
Yeah, a little bit of risk to it. And usually if it's a foreclosure, you're going against investors. And so then you're getting into the whole, another bidding war.
But on the short sale, that comes cheaper.
And you don't even know how the property is gonna be, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes angry owners that were evicted, they could
Yeah.
vandalize the.
Pour concrete down the plumbing and
I
have,
mean,
yeah,
that's-
all
yeah.
kinds of stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen that personally, but I've heard investor stories where it's like, you know, they got mad, they took brooms and put holes in the ceiling,
Yeah.
poured concrete in the plumbing. Yeah.
I've heard that, on one property, they mixed eggs with milk and they poured it in between the hardwood floors.
Oh
my
my
God.
gosh.
That is like so maliciously
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is evil. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awful. And then turned off the AC.
Yeah, that's right. Boarded up all the windows.
If you have money to fix everything, then
Yeah, then you're good.
Yeah.
Then you're good.
You want my house?
Yeah, so you think you're getting a deal, but at the end,
Yeah.
you know, you have to
And
spend
you
more
gotta
money.
show
spend more money.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what if I want to? So what if it's just land and I want to build the property?
That's a good question. So that's something where we'd have to find you a builder,
Okay.
and you know, find you the lot. Usually, depending on where you're looking, it's probably gonna have to be a tear down. If you're looking, like for example, in McLean right now, a tear down lot, quarter acre is like $950, just
Mhm.
for the house, so they can tear it down to start to build a new house. Arlington, depending on where you're at, you're probably about 900 to 950. There's some places in Falls Church where you can get a tear down for like $750, and again, these are quarter acre lots. But then it's a matter of finding that deal, and then
But
you
what a
would find
fun
a builder.
process.
What's that?
I said, but what a fun
What a fun
process.
process,
Your
yeah.
house built.
Yeah, so that's just a matter of that. Now, if you wanted to go out further, you know, you might find a vacant lot. But then you have to worry about like, have they done all the studies on it? Do they know, are there utilities there? Or, you know, can you build on a lot? We had a lot in Great Falls, a 5-acre lot that was cheap, like $350,000 or $400,000, but you couldn't build on it.
Oh.
And we got so many calls on that property, and it's like there was no way that you could build
So
on it.
many people had so many studies done, had the county coming out and be like, but can we do this? Like they tried and tried,
Yeah.
and there's just like, that is
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
gonna
so
happen.
for a first-time home buyer, that's gonna be
Yeah.
that's
But
gonna be an
I'll buy
adventure.
it.
The mortgage is completely different for the lot and for construction to perm.
Yeah.
You have to put 20% down, and it's different process.
Is a 20% like standard automatic?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're just buying the land, and everything else is kind of speculation and.
So 20% across like all lenders, or just
Well, typically, but you're not gonna get first-time home buyer, zero money down type of loans.
Yeah.
You know, maybe 10, 15 somewhere. But for land, all I hear is 20%
okay.
down payment. Once you get the land, then you also need to get mortgage for construction. They call it construction to perm. Because the difference between if you buy an existing home, right, it's already there, or you buy it from a builder, new construction, the builder financing, you know, they spend their money to build, and then you get in the mortgage. When you actually building yourself, you need to supply builder with the money. They're not gonna spend their own money on your land. And that's, you get in a separate mortgage for construction to perm, and that, you know, the down payment could vary, could be a little bit less, could be 10%, but it's not gonna be, typically not less than that, yeah.
If you have time, you can do it.
Yeah.
Lot of time.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
SK, do you have any other questions?
No,
You good? Okay. All right, so I will send you guys out an email, and again, I'll give Tatiana your information, she'll